when I
pour
seen
water
your dad,
up
I'm
here
like, well,
behind
yeah,
the stage.
I put two and two together.
If anyone needs some hydration, being outside
was,
tonight, come on up. And,
Wow,
Sherry and Ryan are bringing it out front now for us.
Here's the back of the book.
First off, just wanted to say thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us outside here at the new Legacy Square. We're excited to be outside in these difficult, trying times and have a little more space outside. But I do appreciate you all showing up and being here to hear from our candidates. And if you do have questions, I know Sherry and Rylan have already walked through the crowd a little bit, but they will be available to, if you just raise your hand, they'll be watching for you. They'll bring around a pad, paper, and some pencils so you can submit your questions in writing. That's how we'll take all questions this evening, is just submitting them to a question table, and then they'll pass them up so we can ask the candidates when they're on stage. My name is Ryan Henningsen. I'll be the moderator this evening. Again, if any candidates have just shown up, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the check-in table to my left, to your right of the stage, and letting us know you're here. If you could, please turn off your cell phones, or at least make sure they're on silent, just to respect when the candidates are up here speaking, so everybody can hear. The restrooms are open, and they're back here to my left if you need to use the restrooms. When you do submit questions, please make sure that they're regarding issues and not directly towards individuals. All questions will be submitted, as I said, from the floor to the table. And want to thank our sponsors this evening. First is the Ottawa Area Chamber of Commerce and the Legislative Action Committee, Franklin County Farm Bureau Association, and AT&T. Also want to thank the City of Ottawa for filming. They're going to have this broadcasted live on Facebook Live, as well as on the Government Access channel. So you'll be able to see it in those formats as well. All right, so we're going to start this evening with our U.S. Senate candidate. That is Brian Matlock. I believe it's the gentleman we have here this evening. So Brian, if you come on up. So, Brian, I think you're the only U.S. Senate candidate here with us this evening. So, what we'd like you to do is you'll have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and talk about yourself as the candidate. And then if we have a couple questions, we'll ask those to you as well. Okay. So go ahead, Brian. I think that might be.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for having us out tonight. My name is Brian Matlock. I'm running for U.S. Senate, and basically I live in Kansas City, Kansas, and I'm here with my wife Adrienne of 14 years. I teach economics and research at UMKC. Basically what inspired me to run for this position was my parents. They were, growing up, the vision of, for me, what is being a good neighbor and a good Republican, because they were constantly opening their homes to others, donating, volunteering, helping out their neighbors, and working hard to provide for us. And a lot of that good neighbor ethic, I feel like we don't see enough in politics in the country. I've tried to live out those values my entire life, both starting as a minister and then working in community nonprofits, and getting into economics because I wanted to understand how do we solve some of the root issues of poverty in our country. And with these increasing healthcare, housing, and education costs for 40 years while we've had stagnant wages. So I'm a little bit of an unusual candidate. I'm running as a Republican socialist. And basically, I believe that there are a lot of Republicans who distrust big business just as much as big government. That this partisan trench war we find ourselves in is unproductive, and we need to find a way to be able to talk to each other. Are there reasons to believe that the big government is inefficient and it doesn't have our best interests at heart? Yeah. Are there reasons for our younger generation growing up in the global financial crisis who thinks maybe corporations and bankers don't have our best interests at heart? Yeah, we're not crazy. And we can build off some of our shared values of hard work, of, okay, there we go.
Well, Brian, you're the only U.S. candidate, or U.S. Senate candidate here. So if you want to just continue talking about maybe some of your top priorities that you would have if elected.
So I believe a lot of the small town and rural communitarian values of helping each other out, having potlucks and barn raising and things like that have a lot in common with the history of Midwestern bottom-up socialists that have organized farmers into cooperatives and other things to protect against being played against one another. I think the biggest thing facing us right now with this COVID epidemic is the economy. We risk opening up to another Great Depression. We're going to have a crisis at the level of people aren't spending enough money because they're not making money, which hurts businesses. Businesses are having trouble, they're not all open, they can't pay their rent, they can't do these things. And then state and local governments are expected to have enormous shortfalls. And when we already have a crumbling infrastructure, we're looking at not having to further cut spending on education and infrastructure. We need someone who's going to decisively act in ways that will make sure we open up to a healthy, prosperous economy. And some of the things that I want to do that I think bridge the working class Republican and the sort of Bernie socialist is talking about how do we put more of the power of like, okay, if we need to fund these things, how do we put more decision-making power in the local hands? How do we have the federal funds support local priorities and decision-making and control rather than all of the centralization? So a federal jobs guarantee, which will put people to work doing some of the testing, some of the like fitting schools and other sorts of things with the needed safety requirements, as well as have local communities decide when there's unemployment, there's lots of work to go around still. So we can decide what are the things we care about in our communities and our priorities so that we're not all just sitting around unemployed at home, when instead there's plenty of work to be done and we can have the local communities decide what work gets done. So I hope you'll vote for me, both as an economist who is going to work hard to make sure we open up to a functioning economy, but also I hope all of us realizes that the way things are going are not working. We have completely different news media, almost like we're living in two different worlds. But down deep, we have a lot of the same values. We want healthcare. We want to be able to work a job and get a decent living. We want to, and at the end of the day, we can focus on that and learn to have conversations with each other to build a different way forward. Because whether or not you think it's me, I think a lot of us know we need to change. I'm about trying new things and seeing a different future. If y'all want to run for something, try something new, please do. So thank you very much. August 4th primary, U.S. Senate.
Thank you, Brian. I did want to let everyone know that Hallie Lindstrom is here in the back as well. She's here representing her father, Dave Lindstrom, who's also running in the U.S. Senate race. Thank you. And they have signs, and she said she'd be available to answer questions if anyone has questions for her as well. So at this time, I'd like to ask the U.S. House candidates to please come on up. So when we have candidates with opposition here, the format will be we'll give each candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll field questions from the audience. And so again, if you have questions that you'd like to submit, raise your hand, and Rylan or Sherry will come around with a pad of paper and a pen so you can submit those to our question table, and then they'll get them up to me. All right. So how about, Jake, how would you just want to start with your 2-minute introduction?
Be happy to. Good evening. I'm glad to see you all here, and what a great venue to have this outdoors and us all to be able to come together like this. It's 2 weeks from today. We have a big decision to make in a lot of different races. And so the idea that you're spending time coming out and learning more about the candidates to better make that decision, I think, is great. My name is Jake Letourneau. I'm running as a conservative Republican for the U.S. House for 2 reasons. One, I think we need a congressman that we can count on to do what they say they're going to do. And we need to make sure that we keep this seat in Republican hands. The mayor of Topeka, her name is Michelle De La Isla, has recently had fundraisers with Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Kathleen Sebelius. She's been endorsed by Elizabeth Warren and is on Nancy Pelosi's Red to Blue program. They're targeting this district, and it is incredibly important that we put our best foot forward in this race. A little bit about myself. I grew up in southeast Kansas, Galena. My wife grew up in Chanute. We met at school at Pittsburgh State. I worked for Watco, a short line railroad company. Got elected to the state senate, served there, and now I've been treasurer for the last 3 years. And every step of the way, I have tried to lead on conservative issues. We have a lot of elected officials that sit in the back row and watch things go by, but I think the days for that are over. $26.5 trillion in debt, people walking the halls of Congress talking about infanticide, socialism. We need leaders now more than ever. I received an A+ rating from the NRA because I actually carried constitutional carry. I won the Pro-Life Hero Award from Kansans for Life because I carried Simon's Law and we actually got it passed. I introduced welfare reform that included work requirements and drug testing. And as treasurer, we have led in the same way, making sure we've returned a record amount of unclaimed property, and we're going to do the same thing in Congress. Make sure we're leading and actually getting things done. Because the time for sitting still or sitting in the back row is well over. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Dennis Taylor. I'm a business owner from Topeka. I teach business law at Washburn University. I've been a Shawnee County Commissioner in the past, Kansas Secretary of Labor, Kansas Secretary of Administration, and I served my country overseas in 15 capitals around the world, but particularly as a senior advisor to the U.S. State Department for democracy and national security in Eastern Europe. But I'm really running for this seat because of the current crisis that we find ourselves in that I don't think is being spoken to nearly enough. My friends, we are at war. We have, as of March 20th, 4 months and 1 day ago, we had 200 deaths in this country. Today we have 141,200 deaths. So this is a war we're not winning. We're not winning because we don't have a plan and we don't have the manpower mobilized to implement the plan even if we had one. We need to be doing that not just for our health, that's one good reason, but for economic recovery. We're not going to build confidence to get back to where we need to be in terms of the economy until we get that infection rate down. Now, we could wait for the vaccine. We can all hope for that, but hope isn't a strategy. And we ought to have an alternate plan B, and we don't have one right now. We got a mix of things that a lot of people are doing. They're trying hard. Right now, the leadership in the Congress is talking about another $1 trillion about spending. That's one method, but I think we should have mobilized the 20 million unemployed that we've got in this country to do the tracing, the testing, the isolating the virus. Otherwise, we're not going to get this done. My wife is here with me tonight. She and I own that business in Topeka. The revenues are down about a third. They don't seem to be coming back. And unless we want to be like Florida and Arizona and Texas, they didn't think they were going to be like New York. Unfortunately, they are at this point. So we need to be looking at those things. I make you 2 pledges. 1, I will serve no more than 2 terms in Congress. 2, I will give 50% of my paycheck to COVID-19 relief. I'm the only candidate in this race who is not speaking ill of other Republicans, and as a consequence, I'm the only candidate who's going to be able to bring us together and win in November. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor. stay here. I'll ask you the first question.
All right, very good.
We'll go a minute and a half, and I'll ask each of the candidates the same question. Do you have that card, Richard? 2 minutes. All right, we'll do 2 minutes. So, besides the citizens assisting your campaign, how will you consistently involve citizens once sworn into office if elected?
Well, I've had the privilege of serving in office, both, as I said, as county commissioner and also cabinet secretary. And in those roles, particularly as secretary of labor and as county commissioner, I held district-wide and statewide town halls on job issues when I was secretary of labor, and on a variety of issues when I was a county commissioner. So I would probably do the same thing. I'd also seek input and feedback from the citizens of the 2nd District to determine how best to receive feedback from you all. I've listened on calls not only from our current congressman but from previous ones on the phone. I know that those are sometimes utilized as well to get some feedback. I haven't found as a recipient on the other end of those to be very effective, but I'm not saying that I wouldn't do that, because if people like those and find them more valuable than I have in the past, then I'd certainly be open to that as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Letourneau, do you want me to repeat that?
No, I think I got it. Thank you. Listen, I put out the Contract with Kansas, and you can check it out at contractwithkansas.com. And I outline a few things, term limits, balancing the budget, reforming our immigration system. But one that is direct to this question is that I vow to live and raise my family here in Kansas. The 2nd Congressional District has been home to me and my family for 7 generations now. This is home. This is where I was born and raised. It's where I'm going to be forever. So I say that because I know the people. I understand the issues. And it's because I'm listening, because I'm traveling. And I will never stop doing that. We will have an open door policy for you to reach out to us. We will continue to work our tails off and show up at events like this and others. We're doing it right now, touring different industries throughout the district, touring cities, and I love it. And so I will continue to do that, because I think it is key to communicate with people. You can't represent people well if you don't know them.
And Mr. Letourneau, why don't you stay up, and I'll ask you this question first, and we'll go 1 minute on this question, Richard. What are your views on immigration and promoting population growth in Kansas?
So immigration is an issue that gets tossed back and forth every election cycle, and nothing ever seems to get done about it. I think that we need to reform our immigration system. We need to build the wall, and there's nothing racist about it. It is vital that we control who comes into this country and who comes out of this country, or not who comes out, but who comes into this country, who immigrates in. And something that I want to point out that doesn't get talked about very much, especially by the media, is that we are the most generous nation in the world. Over 1 million legal immigrants every single year. And I don't know anyone that doesn't celebrate people going through the legal immigration process. We need to encourage that to happen. And again, protect our borders and reform our immigration system. For example, the Obama administration doesn't allow immigration judges to issue summary judgments. And so what that meant was immigration judges had to hear testimony in every single case. And as a result, we had very long backlogs. I don't care if you're a liberal or a conservative. You can't look at that and tell me that it's working from an administrative point of view. So we have a lot of work to be done. I'm willing to get in there and do it.
This was really 2 questions, I think, immigration and also the question of population decline. On the immigration issue, I believe that we do need comprehensive immigration reform. And that involves, I see it, 2 critical elements. One is that we need a visa guest worker program, because let's face it, there are jobs in this country that native-born Americans are not that interested in doing in many cases, or are not qualified to do, particularly at the advanced scientific end sometimes, and we don't want to lose that input of foreign help when we could use it most. But we need a legal way to do that as opposed to the exacerbating the illegal immigration problem. That's one. The other one is we need to be engaged in advancing and accelerating deportation of felons from this country. We have got the legal system all tied up in knots in terms of deportation, and we're not doing that very well at the moment. On the issue of population decline, there's about 4 or 5 things I think that really would help that in rural Kansas. One is we need a diversification of the economy. 2 is we need quality of life. Doctors, lawyers, teachers have to be able to live here and enjoy the quality of life. And we need to advance the broadband that allows stay-at-home people who have their jobs in their home to be able to utilize the opportunities to live in rural Kansas, which they can't always do when broadband is not available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Do you want to start on this next question as well? And we'll go 3 minutes on this question. So Congress passed a $2.4 trillion stimulus package in March, which is approximately 12% of our U.S. GDP, and talked that another package could pass here later this month or in August for stimulus. If elected, what are your plans to help improve our national debt, which now stands at $26.5 trillion?
Well, in the short term, I think in the long term, I would want to balance the budget, of course. Certainly serving as a county commissioner, I've had some experience with that, certainly at the state level, running state agencies. We live within our means, both at the county and the state level. And I know how to do that. But what we are in right now is the makings, potentially, of a second Great Depression. In 1929 and 1930, Republicans made a mistake. We were against any kind of stimulus, any kind of creating a money supply that would churn the economy to prosperity again. Herbert Hoover famously said, prosperity is just around the corner. Well, it was around the corner if you count the next 10 years in World War II, which finally got us back to some semblance of economic prosperity. But it wasn't in the short term. He also said that this depression problem is going to go away eventually. Well, eventually was another decade and a half. So if we want economic prosperity, Republicans as well as others are going to have to live with the stimulus. Now the question is, how is that stimulus going to be created? Is it just a giveaway, essentially? Well, I got my $1,200 check. My wife and I can get along without that $1,200 check. We're not doing a scrutinization of who is getting that money at this point, and it's not helping the situation near as much as it would if we did some sort of better means testing of that money, or, as I said earlier, if we put that money to work hiring the 20 million unemployed, or some portion of them, to do the testing, the tracing, the isolating of the virus. Italy, South Korea, Taiwan, all these countries had problems before, and they managed to get the virus down. They did it by doing that testing, tracing. 250 roughly on average, 250 people per positive case. In our country, we're doing about 12 tests per 1,000 positive cases. That's woefully short. We're not going to be anywhere close to getting this solved in the first of my 2 terms in Congress, unless we do something like what I'm describing. That's going to cost money. That's going to raise the debt. But we're borrowing at 0 interest right now, folks, and there isn't a better time, frankly, to do infrastructure projects or virus testing projects than there is right now. And if we spend the money now, it'll come back to us tenfold. We spent the money on World War II. I said earlier, we're at war. If we're at war now, we better win this one, and we better do it soon.
Thank you.
I think it's important that I remind everyone how we got to the strongest economy that we've had. And it was through tax cuts and deregulation. That's how Donald Trump got the economy that we had. Tax cuts and deregulation. We are not going to spend our way into prosperity here by borrowing money from China and other places and then asking our children and our grandchildren and their children to pay for it. It is a moral issue. We bring in $3.5 trillion a year in revenues to this government and spend $4.5 trillion. That is wrong. We've got to get it under control, and it takes tough decisions to get there. I'll tell you this, the stimulus package that was just passed, my criticism isn't so much the stimulus package, although I think we should have Congress show up and actually vote on things instead of voice votes. But my criticism is the previous several decades, where year in and year out, we don't make tough decisions. And here's the reality of the situation. I told somebody the other day that Washington is broken, and we all know that it is broken, but they pointed out, they said, well, it depends on your perspective. If you're a elected congressman, Washington works pretty darn well for you. You don't have to make any tough decisions, you keep getting reelected, and you're never held accountable. And so we've got to get straight and say, first and foremost, we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. That's one. And number two, we have to go about the business of finding savings. And there's no way to do that without holding people accountable, shrinking government programs, making sure that they're done more efficiently. And I know how to do that. I've done that as your state treasurer. When I came into the treasurer's office, we had 42 employees. We're down to 32 employees, and we've done it largely through attrition when people have moved on. And guess what we've done with fewer employees? We've broken records every single year of returning unclaimed property. We broke record our first year, broke our own record the second year. Forbes ranks our 529 program the top 5 in the country. And the way we've been able to do it is through accountability. That's what we do not have at the federal government, and we need it. We reduced our square footage in the treasurer's office. This is one of my favorites. We racked our own server, which requires air-conditioned space. It's kind of expensive square footage, and it costs the treasurer's office about $60,000 a year. We moved it up one flight of stairs and cost less than $10,000 a year. Now, folks, you can go through the state government and the federal government and find thousands of opportunities to save money. And the trouble that we have is we don't have politicians that are willing to look you in the eye and say, guys, we've got to cut spending. It's not all going to feel good, but it has to get done because we cannot continue to burden our children and grandchildren for the things that we're enjoying today. Thank you.
Okay, I think Mr. Letourneau, I'll have you go first. And why don't we take 2 minutes each and tell us what your top 2 or 3 priorities would be if elected, and why you should ask for our vote.
So is this our closing thing?
Yes.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned before, the contract with Kansas. The reason I put it out and the reason that I'm calling it a contract is I want to give you the ability to hold me accountable. If you go back and look at politicians' ads, especially during election season, and then compare it to their voting records, you would be shocked, or maybe you wouldn't be shocked, sadly. I sat in seats just like you're sitting in, and we had politicians come in and talk to us, and then they didn't do what they said they're going to do, and I was disappointed. And so for me, I put out where I'm going to be on the issues so you're able to hold me accountable. You're able to say, hey, Jake, you said this, and then you didn't perform. I can't support you again. That's what you should be saying. And so in this contract, number 1 is term limits. We need term limits at the federal level. We cannot keep sending the same people back to Washington, D.C. and expecting a different result. And it changes everything. If you go there and say, I want to serve a couple of terms, I think you want to get something done while you're there. But if, on the other hand, you go there and say, I want to be here for the next 30 years, it becomes all about the next election. And what helps win elections? It's money. And who has money? It's special interest groups. And the cycle goes round and round and round. We have to get term limits passed. And the natural question is, well, how do you get people to vote against their own self-interest? And this is the answer to it. If you ask people, do you support term limits, 80% will say, yeah, I do. But then if you say, well, is it in your top 3 issues? And it isn't for most people. It has to go up in the level of importance. So whether you support me or someone else, I hope you'll say, it is a requirement to earn my support that you support term limits. In the contract, we talk about the need to reform our immigration system, to pass a balanced budget, to make sure that we have people that are willing to stand up and defend life and the Second Amendment, which are under attack in this country every single day. And as I mentioned before, we vow to live and raise my family here in Kansas because we think it's critical. August 4th is coming up in 2 weeks. I'm the only candidate endorsed by the Farm Bureau, the only candidate endorsed by Kansans for Life, the only candidate endorsed by the Kansas Policy Institute. and I need your support. We have to have somebody that represents our values, and we have got to keep this seat in Republican hands. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
I told you a little earlier that I would limit myself to 2 terms in Congress. Voting for term limits is easy. Everybody knows that it's not going to pass. And just for the same reason it was described, it's not on anybody's top 10 list. So the only way it's going to happen is if the candidates themselves express that and you hold them to that. And I'm willing to be doing that. I'm the only one in the race that's doing that. I applaud Jake for cutting 10 people out of his staff of 42. Having run SRS when it had 8,000 people, the Department of Labor when it had 850 people, and Department of Administration when it had 550, I have some experience with doing the same thing. Each of those agencies, when I left them, were 10% lower in terms of staff than when I got there, and we didn't reduce any service levels. So I believe in cutting expenditures. The only thing is, trying to analogize that situation of 10 jobs in Kansas to a $2.5 trillion, 26 trillion debt ceiling over the next decade or so is not an analogy that makes any sense. And if we're really going to be able to do anything here, we're going to, and we're not borrowing from China, by the way, right now. What we're doing is we're printing money. I'm not saying that's great, but we are the default currency in the world, and we are able to do that, where no other country in the world can do that, at 0 interest. And we're going to be able to, if we build back our economy, pay ourselves back, much like what happened in the Great Recession in 2008 and 2009, where the United States government actually made money by making loans to people like GM and others. So we need to be doing these kinds of things. My 2 priorities, economic recovery and getting the virus under control, they're intertwined. A lot of other issues are significant. I don't mean to minimize them. But if we don't get that one solved, we're going to have a lot more trouble over the next decade.
Thank you. Appreciate your time, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Letourneau. Appreciate you being here. I did want to make an announcement that Ron Kovac from Steve Watkins' campaign is here back at the table, and Steve was in D.C. today, so he invited you to stop by and talk to them if you have any questions for that campaign as well. So next candidates I'd like to have come up are, I saw both of them here, Mike Bruner and Karen Tyson for the Kansas Senate. Both are running unopposed, so we're going to give each of them 2 minutes to come up and introduce themselves and talk about why we should vote for them. So, Karen, I'll let you go first.
That's great. Use this microphone? Okay. Well, good evening. It's great to see you guys. I can't tell you how beautiful this event is, and you guys all know it. Just look at the sky and look at all the people here. And I got to tell you, this is the first forum I've ever been at with a dog. And we're glad you're here. You guys, it is so important and so critical what is going on now in our state and our nation. And I'm going to ask you to stand with me, to stand with Tyson when you go vote in August and in November. You guys remember when we brought Huckabee here? It was a big event. It was huge. Well, my husband and I still follow him and listen to him. And we heard him talk this weekend. And he said, you can vote for the candidate that's nice. You can vote for the candidate that gets things done. And we need to get things done. Well, you guys have a great option in this race. You got a candidate that combines both nice and gets things done. So I ask for your vote. You guys know my platform. Traditional values, economic development, limited government, and we need that more than ever now. We have a governor who keeps overreaching. It's obvious when she shut down the churches and the courts told her, no, you can't do that. She said, wear a mask, and we were told 90 counties in the state of Kansas said, we'll make it optional on the mask. Now, she's saying, delay our schools until after Labor Day. Well, she's going to find out that she's going to be reined in on that one too, because it's local control. The local commissioners, county commissioners can override that, and the local school board make that decision. And that's what we need. You know what's best for your area, and Western Kansas knows what's best for them. So let's make it local. Let's stick together. Let's stand for freedom. I ask for your vote and your support in August and in November. Thank you very much.
I thought I had 3 minutes, but I'll do it too. My name is Mike Bruner. I'm a retired teacher from Chanute. I live in Humboldt at Allen County at the south end of the Senate District. I have been involved in politics my entire adult life. I've worked on Republican and Democratic campaigns, though I am a proud Democrat. I am wearing this purple shirt to represent the Common Sense Coalition of our campaign, and I'm happy to say that I have unaffiliated Republican members of my team who are mayors and have been mayors in Iola and Ottawa, the two large towns in our district. Naturally, as a former teacher and a grandparent, I'm interested in education. I want to support the full funding of education. I believe in public funds for public schools. I believe in a safe environment for our children. I got into this campaign because I'm concerned about access to hospitals, clinics, and health care in rural Kansas. And it is the incumbents' stand on Medicaid expansion, refusal to support Medicaid expansion that brought me into this. But I also have problems with the nature of our politics these days. I reject the personal destruction, the disinformation, the horrible nature of our politics. I will tell you that before this campaign is over, some of the least ethical candidates are going to be demagoguing socialism. They're going to be sending out misleading and nasty and dishonest postcards about their opponents. We need to clean up our politics. We need politics of cooperation and consensus, and maybe even a little bit of compassion. And I guess that's really why I want to get into this. And I'm sorry, I planned 3 minutes. I might mention that I'm going to steal some extra time. What I couldn't get in, you can check Bruner for Kansas on Facebook for those things that I couldn't get in a 2-minute period. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay, so if I could have all the Kansas House candidates come on up to the stage now. And again, I'll ask anybody has questions you'd like to submit, raise your hand. We have people coming through that can give you a pad of paper and a pencil to write those down and submit it to our questions tables. The good news is for our candidates, it's so hot out here, they won't see, you can't tell if they're sweating over the question or just the heat out here. Yeah, just bring them on. So, first thing we'd like to do is just give each of you a minute and a half to stand up and introduce yourself and talk about why you're running. So, Mark, I'll just have you start. Come on.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out here. Appreciate the host putting this together. Most of you know me, born and raised here in Franklin County. Went off to school. Learned a lot about the law, the Constitution, but one thing that's always stuck with me growing up on the family farms in this area is fighting for the little guy. There's not a whole lot of that going on right now, but I'm proud of the record that we've put together over the last 2 years. That's a fight that I'm willing to continue for the next 2 years if the voters will so have me. There's all kinds of issues that are important coming up. That's from our rural economy, transportation, our schools. We're going to have a lot to do with the budget. And then we've got redistricting coming up. So for our farmers and businesses, and especially making sure that decisions are made at the local level when that makes sense, that we make sure we've got real representation in that regard. So my record's out there. It's a record we're proud of. I'm proud of the local endorsements and state endorsements that we've been able to acquire. I look forward to answering your questions throughout the evening. Thanks.
Jerry, you can-
Thank you, and thanks to all of you for being here this evening. It's so important that all of us learn about the candidates. I'm Sherry Weber, and I came tonight so that you could learn about me and so that I could learn about you. My husband is in the audience, and I never fail, I hope, to introduce him because I appreciate his help all the time, Morgan. And we also have 3 children. Our children were raised over at our family farm in Harrington. And after that point in time, when the children were grown, I ran for the legislature because I wanted to give something back for living in such a great country. And I knew that I would never serve in the military, the people who protect our freedom and the right that we have to vote. But I did know that I could run for public office. And I served actually in the Kansas House for several terms. And I feel now that I need to step up again for the same reason, because I care about the quality of life that we hand to our children and our grandchildren. And this year, I feel our liberty has really been eroded. Our legislators left town after they passed a House concurrent resolution. It was passed on March 13th in the House. It went through the Senate on the 17th, and our governor immediately shut down K-12 ed for the rest of the school year, and now she's doing it again. So it's time to step up for our liberty. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, I'll have you go next.
All right, thank you very much. Looks like we found a shade over here and a shade there. That's a good choice. My name is Mark Powles. I grew up in Garnett, Kansas. I was a school teacher for 15 years. Did about 12 years of part-time help as a PE teacher and a music teacher and their custodian at a Catholic school in Garnett. I got my master's and bachelor's degree at Pittsburgh State University. Served in the Kansas Army National Guard at right here in Ottawa, Kansas, 127th Field Artillery. That was way back. And got out and then was taken up again by the 35th Infantry Division Band out of Olathe, Kansas. And back in 2001, I did get out of the public school system because I did start a family. My wife and I have been married for 22 years. I have a daughter, Bethany, that is 20 years old, is now in college, and a 17-year-old daughter that is going to hopefully begin and finish her senior year in high school. We're crossing our fingers. The reason why I'm running is because it's necessary and it's my duty to do so. It was not my choice. Sometimes these things choose you, you don't choose it. I do have a private business that I am working on right now, but it had to be put on life support until this is all over. So I hope I do get your vote on August 4th. We've got a lot of things to do in our government. My position is that government needs to be reined in, not the people.
Chief, if you want to take care of that, muffler seems a little bit loud. My name is Blaine Finch. I'm running for state rep for the 59th District. It's been my honor and privilege to serve you for the last 8 years in the Kansas House. I was privileged enough to be born and raised here in Franklin County. My mom, Monica, is right over there with the Finch shirt, in case you're wondering. And my dad, Ralph, is here tonight as well. And I want to thank them for everything they've done for me in getting me to this point in my life. Ottawa's my hometown. I'm a business owner here. I've raised my family here. I hope to get my daughter to move back here someday. Our firm is right down there. This is our 150th year. It's one of the longest continuously operated law firms in the state of Kansas, and that's something I'm proud of, to be part of that legacy. And it's what I try to do in your public service. I try to carry on the legacy of good representation from this area, to fight for the things that are important to you, values, like being pro-life, like taking care of those who are vulnerable, like our elderly, fighting for our rights when it comes to things like local control. A lot of what Senator Tyson talked about is because of the work we did in the special session this year in House Bill 2016 to make sure that we retain government closest to the people and that we govern with the lightest touch possible so that we preserve our constitutional freedoms and our public health and safety. We can have both, we should have both, and it starts by maintaining our rights and our privileges that we are given by our Creator. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you tonight and answer your questions. I'm happy to stick around and talk with any of you after as well. May God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you all for the introductions. I'll ask these questions. So we have Mr. Powles, Mr. Samsel running for the same district seat, and then Sherry Weber and Blaine Finch running for the same seat. So I'm going to ask them to respond to the same question when I ask these. So Mr. Powell, I'll let you start, and then Mark, I'll let you answer the same question after Mr. Powell's. And let's go 2 minutes on this question. How would you address the reopening of schools in the state of Kansas?
I would open them on time and with as little restrictions as possible. We have a thing called hygiene, and this is a good opportunity to teach our students how to take care of their hygiene. We've had a lot of ups and downs with this whole crisis. Yes, we have a virus. We've had worse viruses. This one may be a little more contagious, but in my opinion, in my district in Garnett, Kansas, and many others, we could have finished the year. We had no cases. So my opinion on this is get started. I know my daughter who is attending Bethel College, they're starting on time, August 19th. We can make decisions for ourselves. And this chimes in with the whole local control issue. Thank you.
That's a very good question, and I don't know that there's been a great answer to it, nor do I know that there is one. My biggest problem, and I've answered this question and similar ones about the mask and everything else, but we ought to be trying to find a goal, whether that comes from our president or from our governor or somebody in leadership, but what is our plan to beat COVID-19? And whether we think it's merely just another version of the common flu or we think it's something far more serious, if we can get everybody rallying behind it, Americans are pretty dang good at coming together and beating something, but I have not yet seen a plan that's supposed to get us through. We all remember the flatten the curve hashtags came out right off the bat, and I think we did a pretty good job of that. But then what has our plan been since then, I think is where we struggle. And so I know we use the term herd immunity a lot. Well, my understanding of that is that essentially the thing's going to spread because we don't have a solution for it yet. We don't have a vaccine, we don't have a pill, and it's probably not going to magically go away. So my general philosophy and what we tried to put together in the special session was allowing those decisions to be made not by one person, whether that's the president or the governor or me or anybody else. Those are best made locally. That's where we are best able to adapt. That's where we're best able to find local solutions. And our problems down in 1A, Crest High School and Colony are not the same that we have in Garnett or Wellsville or here in Ottawa or certainly up in Kansas City, Olathe, or other parts of the state. So that's why I'm proud that we passed legislation that put that in the hands of the State Board of Education and the local school boards. Now that said, it also gets to transparency and process. The bill that we passed in the special session is not perfect, and that's why I've said repeatedly on Facebook and everywhere else, the more people we bring to the table to solve these things, instead of having just a small group, we get better solutions that way. So to me, the answer is not crystal clear in the legislation we put together, but that's something that we can improve when we come back in January, and so that we can find the best solutions so that those things are made best, whether it's from our school boards or from the State Board of Education. But I've also advocated for the state legislature in a way that we can do it and do it best for the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Webb, I'll let you start with this next question. We'll go 2 minutes on this question for Sherry and Blaine as well. So we just talked about school reopenings and masks were mentioned as well. And how would you address what some are calling a current overreach from our current government and the potential overreach of future governors?
Overreach has been the entire environment since about mid-March. And again, it's because of a House Concurrent Resolution 5025 that got passed, and it gave the governor, very short piece of legislation, gave the governor control, the legislative control, until January 25th of 2021. So having a legislature that left town halfway through the session and didn't go back has been a problematic thing, whether it's taken out businesses, whether it's put children at home, whether it's stressed families. It does not matter. Everybody has been touched in this in one way or the other. We even had a governor who had the audacity to shut down churches. So that legislation was flawed. We got sued in terms of our legislature over it. And I believe the only way to fix this is to take them and put them back in Topeka and fix it. Now, there's two ways you can do that. You can call the legislature back if you have a supermajority of legislators who want to come back, or you can have the governor call a special session. Well, the governor called a special session, and they came up with a House bill named 2016 that puts local control on everybody's radar screen, but it certainly didn't help, did it? Because the governor decided that now we're going to push schools off until the end of August, the beginning of September after Labor Day. So I don't think that piece of legislation is working. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this discussion with the state school board and with local commissioners. That's why I believe that you have to send someone like me who's willing to stand up and say no. When you have an obligation to stand up for the Constitution, even in the face of emergencies like 911 and now COVID-19, you have to stay and do your job. I appreciate that you have been listening so attentively, and I hope that you'll take my story and look at the piece that's inside of it about the legislation and study it. And I think you'll come to the same conclusion I did. Thank you.
For some of you who were in Osage the other night, you'll remember this. My opponent's reliance on House Concurrent Resolution 5025 is a little bit like somebody saying the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl because they were down at the end of the first quarter. The reality is this game isn't over. It's not finished. The legislature passed a first draft, and that's what she's been handing out, the very first draft of that resolution, not even the final draft adopted by both houses. That's misleading. She's had two opportunities to correct that, and she continues to do it, so at this point I assume it's willfully misleading you as voters. The reality is the resolution that we passed included more checks and balances than any legislature operating under this law in the last 45 years. The law that we had to deal with emergency management in the state was left to us by legislators like my opponent who had been there before. We added checks and balances, and when we exercised them, the governor sued us. No great surprise. She didn't want to be checked. We checked her. And we were later found by a U.S. federal court to have done the right thing, that the order she had promulgated was unconstitutional. Local control is the answer. Our legislature, by our state constitution, is not to be there all the time like Congress, sucking up money and taking up time. It's to be there 90 days as a citizen body to come and vote on things and go home. And that's what we do. Your county commissioners, your Board of Education have constitutional responsibilities to exercise local control and oversee our state school system. That's why we use those bodies, because that's the constitutional republic in which we find ourselves. Creating the legislature as some sort of super dictator to tell all the other branches what to do is unconstitutional. It's not our system in this state, and it's not how we should do business. Schools should open when the school professionals say they should open, not an elected governor, not the legislature. We have a state board of education whose sole constitutional responsibility is to oversee public education. And our superintendent and our school board in this town had it right. They had a plan to reopen. They had a plan to use virtual education that, oh, by the way, the governor's order absolutely prohibits virtual education prior to Labor Day weekend. We can do better. Local control is the answer, and we'll see what the state school board does tomorrow. Thank you.
Mr. Sands, I'll let you start on this question, and we'll go 2 minutes on this question as well. Can you explain your plan or thoughts for Medicaid expansion and how it affects the state of Kansas?
Yeah, and this is a question that's come up frequently, Medicaid expansion. And I've explained both sides of this issue. I've voted for it once and I voted against it once because it depends on what's in the plan. What we've got right now from the federal government is they are printing a bunch of money that we don't have, and my generation and those younger than us are going to be paying for it. But that money right now is still coming out, it's still being printed, and it's going to 37 states across our country. Kansas is not one of them right now, so we're not getting a small piece of that pie that's coming from Washington, D.C. So on the one hand, I absolutely get it. If you want to get rid of Medicaid and get rid of Medicaid expansion, cut it. But that needs to be done at the federal level. Because the flip side of that is we're not getting any benefit through that whole process. So what we did, and I was proud to see leadership come together from both sides of the House in the session, is they put together a plan that if you need help with your insurance, then the assistance coming from, they put a little bit of skin in the game. So you can't do work requirements, those have been held unlawful, but you do contribute and pay for part of it yourself, and then that keeps costs down. That's why our local hospitals, when I work in Garnett, Ottawa, and with our mental health clinics, they're saying absolutely yes, please pass Medicaid expansion. It's not perfect, it's not going to save us, but this is a good use of our taxpayer dollars. And so to me, I always come back to transparency in the process because healthcare is a huge issue right now. It's holding up every other healthcare issue. Our independent pharmacies, including Auburn and Garnett and Wellsville, are trying to get some legislation done, PBM legislation, but it can't be done until Medicaid expansion either goes away or gets passed or something's done at the federal level. So if it were up to me, if I'm the federal government, I've got to improve insurance, but obviously that's not the role we have here in the state level. So until then, I think it's incumbent upon everybody in the state legislature to do the best we can, come up with something that works for Kansas, takes advantage of what the federal government allows us to do, but make sure we make good use of taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Mr. Powell, same question. You need me to repeat it?
I'll try to say this gently. Obamacare was unconstitutional. It is not a tax. It is not the federal government's responsibility or enumerated duty to deal with state issues. They deal with foreign objects and interstate commerce, treaties, negotiations, and so on. Okay, there's a confusion there. Okay, so leave the federal government out of it. All right, we've already been through that. Now at the state level, insurance is a state issue. Each state has a responsibility to take care of their own people. That's what we call state sovereignty. We're losing state sovereignty over issues like this every time we run to the federal government for answers. Okay, so as far as Medicaid is concerned, I'm going to make this real short. I'm a Calvin Coolidge fan. He was a man of very few words. We can't do it. We can't afford it.
All right. Mr. Finch, I'll let you start with this question, and let's go 1 minute each on this question. So our mailboxes are filled with promotional cards about this race. Why is there so much interest regarding the race this year?
Mail is one of the ways that we as candidates can communicate with people, and so that's if some of the mailers that you've seen from me are coming from me to tell you about me or to draw a contrast between myself and my opponent. Some of the other mail you're getting is from outside. If it's from a PAC, if it's from a C4, that's outside money. That's usually from some paid consultant, somebody that works closely with the person they're trying to advocate for in order to elect them or defeat someone else. So if you see it and it's coming from outside this district, it doesn't have my name on it, doesn't have my opponent's name on it, you can assume someone else is paying for it and trying to get you to vote the way they want you to vote. I would urge you to be doubly cautious about anything that's not coming from one of the two campaigns, because that tells you that they've got some agenda that they don't want to discuss. And the money they take in isn't publicly disclosed. So that should tell you something right there. If you want transparency, look to who's actually using money from their campaign to spread their message to you. And if you have a question about my record, I'm happy to talk to you anytime. You reach out and call me, message me on Facebook, send me an email. We'll talk about any of that trash that showed up in your mailbox from outside our district.
Same question. 1 minute.
So basically, it's the interest.
You may ask that again. So that question was, our mailboxes are filled with promotional cards about this race. Why is there so much interest regarding this race this year?
Interest in a race is good. We all have a privilege, a right, a responsibility to vote, and we need to do the research to figure it out. And when you've got that much mail in your mailbox, something is going on that you need to do the research about. I can tell you that my husband and I have funded most of what I have sent out, and you have not seen that in your mailbox. You've seen it in your doors. If something has come from outside, it's because someone is protecting their liberty. My opponent has $100,000 in his campaign fund that came from special interests. Those are the same special interests that he talks about fighting against when he's in Topeka for us. But the reality is about 3-4% of it came from all of you. So I think there's where you have to start to do your research and know that the interest here is because it's very serious. It's about our liberty. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask this question to all four of our candidates up here, and I'll let Mr. Powell, I'll let you go first, and then Mark, you can follow, and then Sherry, and then Blaine. 2 minutes each. What is your vision for jumpstarting the Kansas economy following COVID?
Boy, that is a tough one. What I would do is get people back to work right away. First of all, it never should have happened in the first place. That's my opinion. In the state's constitution, it says that all legislative powers shall be vested in the legislative body. Is there a statute that circumvents that in our Constitution? I don't think so. The Constitution is the first. That's what we take an oath to defend and protect. So now that we're here and dealing with this, we're going to have a shortfall. I've heard that from several candidates. My procedure would be to get people back to work right away. Yes, we can be careful, but we've got to get people back to work. The governor, in my opinion, has artificial powers right now. I've told that to people over and over and over again when they ask about this. It is artificial. It is not constitutional, and it needs to end immediately. That's it.
Well, the first thing, and there's two things that go together because you can't do one without the other. One's the economy, and especially our rural economy. The shutdown that we had previously when we tried the one-size-fits-all plan does not work, especially for rural Kansas. It killed agriculture unnecessarily, especially our ethanol plant out in Garnett. It hurts small business, our gym owners, and the restaurant operators, and everybody else. So the one-size-all doesn't work. But the other flip side of that is we've got to come up with something, and this is what I was talking about earlier, to beat COVID-19. We've got to learn either to live with it or beat it or somehow get through it. Until we have that plan, we're all going to keep getting angry at each other over the masks or the mandates, and probably rightfully so, because those are very controversial issues. And if we're not rallying behind a common goal to beat COVID-19, then we're beating each other up unnecessarily. So that all ties into those two big issues coming together. One of them that I'm very proud of is our 10-year transportation plan. It's an Eisenhower legacy plan. That's huge for District 5. That's big for US 169. It's going to be big for 68 Highway. We need an east-west connector that gets all of the growth that's coming down from Johnson County into Miami County and Franklin County. That's huge for District 5. That's huge for here in Ottawa. And then it also ties into having somebody who's willing to fight for the little guy and stand up for the district. And that's why when we talk about these mailers that are coming in, there's a reason that they operate the same way they do year after year after year. I went and I worked with those guys. They wanted these huge income tax cuts, and I'm not opposed to income tax cuts, but do you guys want income tax cuts for just the folks at the top, or for you and me and our neighbors and our farmers? Because I told them when I knocked on doors in this district, we want property tax cuts. We want that for our veterans, our seniors, our farmers, our families. Well, guess what? When I asked them and approached them about property tax cuts, they had no interest. It was their way or the highway, and so when you stand up and fight for the little guy, they're not used to that, they don't like it, and then they flood your mailbox and my mailbox with things that are about 95% untrue. So, the economy and beating COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Weber, same question. Would you address that as well? I can re-ask you. What is your vision for jump-starting the Kansas economy following COVID-19?
We're going to have to get people back to work, and that means that we have to stop the governor from issuing all of these mandates and spending our time trying to litigate with her or utilize our other agencies to try to decide what we should be deciding on a local level. It was havoc, that piece of legislation that allowed the governor to have power until January 25th of 2021. Simple piece of legislation carried by my opponent. They left town, they didn't go back, and equating it to the Super Bowl is like saying the Chiefs left halfway through the game and then at the end threw a Hail Mary pass. This is not working. We have to get businesses back up and running. That's the lifeblood of our economy. That's how we help our budget. And we get back to the legislature, we have to trim things because we don't have the revenue coming in because of what's gone on in the last 3 to 4 months. So this is not going to be an easy job. All of us, and I mean all of us, we're going to have to help one another. We're going to have to help our businesses on a local level. We're going to have to take back our government from the governor. If that means that you have to go to your local school boards or your local commissions, whatever we have to do it. This is a lot like 911 was. I was majority leader then, and people were unrestful. They were frightened. They weren't traveling. They were not spending their money in the economy. And we had a budget hole. At that point in time, it was nearly $150 million. At this point in time, it's going to be much greater than that. And so I've got the experience to work on that budget, having done it before, and that's why I stepped up. That's why I want to give you back your liberty, and I want to hand off a better state to our children.
My vision for our state's economic recovery is that we have a state where we are growing in population. We have young people choosing to stay here. That's why I supported the Kansas Promise Act that would have granted every Kansas high school graduate the opportunity to go to trade school or tech school or community college if they would commit to staying in Kansas for 2 years and working a job here. If they didn't stay here, they'd have to pay that back as a loan. I think we've got to create an environment where our young people want to stay here. We have to have an environment where people feel safe going out and spending money again. Our economy is built on consumption. We need people to go shopping and spend money and to generate that economic churn in our state. So they have to feel safe. And then I think we need to look at a sales tax reduction. The largest tax increase in this state's history was in 2015 when the sales tax was allowed to remain high. I voted against that increase, and what we need to do is look again at sales tax. We voted several times in the last 2 years to reduce the sales tax on food, and we need to make it easier for people because we know that money will go back into the economy and be spent and generate economic growth in our state. The final thing we need to do is encourage investment, and we've done that. We had a bill about first-time homebuyer programs in this state, allowing people to save tax deferred in order to buy a first home or help their young children buy a home or grandparents to get their grandparents to move back to Kansas. The way we're going to have to do this is to get people back in our state and stop losing our best and brightest to other places and get people back comfortable feeling that they can go out and spend and keep our businesses open. And again, that's why House Bill 2016 prevents that and encourages local control and allows county commissioners to make those decisions around this state instead of one governor. So I think that's the vision for how we get out of this rut and move forward together. Thank you.
Mr. Fitch, I'll have to stay up here. We're going to have 2 minutes for all of your closing comments, and I'll let Mr. Finch go, and then Mrs. Weber, and then Mr. Powers, and then Mr. Sampson. So go ahead.
Well, I want to thank the Ottawa Chamber for having this forum. I want to thank all of you for coming out on what's been a nice night compared to a lot of them we've had, but it's still a little sticky. Ryan, I don't know how you're doing it in that jacket. But I want to thank all of you for being a part of this process. Every 2 years for our House members, every 4 years for our senators, you get the chance to weigh in and deliver the ultimate verdict on whether or not you agree with our job performance. I encourage you to look at my record. Look at the jobs that I've held, look at the jobs that I've kept, look at my opponent's record, and you can decide for yourself. I think they stack up and make a pretty clear choice. I have always striven to listen to the constituent concerns that are brought to me, to protect and defend our rights and liberties from all attacks. I'm the only candidate in this race with an A rating from the NRA, endorsed by the NRA, the only candidate in this race that's never voted for taxpayer-funded abortion and who is endorsed by KFL. I'm the only candidate in this race endorsed by our agricultural community, the lifeblood of the Kansas economy, both ag co-ops and the Farm Bureau and Kansas Livestock Association. I have always tried to put this district and our people first because this is my hometown and this is the place I want to continue to live and put down my roots and have my family come back to someday. I have always tried to do that honorably, to represent you well, and I have appreciated every opportunity to be at your service. I hope that you will check out both of us. I hope that you'll make a wise and informed decision, and I ask for your vote on August 4th in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Two minutes is not enough to tell you everything. However, that's what we're going to do. My husband and I moved over to this area about 15 years ago, and I have been involved in politics ever since because I think it's so important for us to be involved on a local level. I believe in limited government. I believe in free markets. I'm an advocate for children born and unborn, and I believe that you work through consensus by standing firm on your principles and by bringing in transparency and working with legislative colleagues. I've got the experience to do that. I've served 10 years in the House, and I've also served as majority leader in leadership in troubled times, and I can lead you through this. I know I can. It's why I stepped up. It's so important that you research these candidates. Yes, I have a voting record, and you'll find that I'm a strong conservative, and the other principles that I told you that I believed in, you'll find that I voted that way as well. But the most important thing this year is your liberty, and you don't have it. None of us have it. We can't go do what we do in America. We can't even give our kids the American dream right now because we've got a governor who's overreaching and out of control, and our legislature gave her that power. And now we're caught in all of these executive orders, 40, 50, 60 of them. I think the ones she just issued are 58 and 59. And we're hardly even halfway through the year. We've got to take it back. We need our liberty. I'm asking for your support and your vote. It is so important for you to talk to your neighbors. I can't stress that enough. You have to be involved, and you have to ask your neighbors to step up, and you have to talk about these things. Call me, write me, ask me any questions. I'm in town a lot and the other towns in the 59th district. I ask for your vote, your support on August 4th. Thank you.
Ditto. That was very good. I want to thank everybody for putting this on in the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce. This is great. I love this place. I have actually never been here before. Wonderful. Wish we had something like this in Garnett. I've heard a lot of great comments tonight. I've heard the word liberty and Constitution come up quite a bit from a lot of candidates. All are good. That's how you control government. If they take an oath of office to the Constitution, that's it. That's simple. That's how you reign in government. That document limits and defines what government can and cannot do. We would not have these conversations today if they would obey their oath of office. And I don't want to get started on the judicial system here in Kansas, but that's another topic we need to discuss at some point. I've got a table over here. I'm just going to spell these out. You can pick this information up. Original intent describes me. I'm a constitutionalist. 100% life, liberty, property rights, which means I'm focused on property taxes. Something needs to be done there. And if you read the Constitution, yes, it does list you will be taxed on your property, but what property are they talking about? Are they talking about the dirt, square footage? When we were settling Kansas, how did that get perverted into your home and your personal property? It shouldn't have happened. Fair taxation, education reform. I don't have time to get into that, but we need help there. I was a former teacher. My wife is still a teacher. I still communicate with teachers all the time. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank the Ottawa Area Chamber of Commerce for putting this together tonight. This is fantastic, and I know it's not easy making plans and then having to remake plans and change plans yet again. Mother Nature even made it interesting to see if we could get this in this evening. But and he's not going to like this, but I'm going to thank my dad who's sitting over here, because all those big orange signs, he and his little dog Peanut, who's going on 17 years young, still has been doing a lot around the District 5 helping me out. So I'd like to thank them for all their help on that. And then my message here, and my most important thing, is I'm from here, I'm for here, and I fight for the little guy, and that means every single one. And that doesn't mean I don't like the big guy, but the little guy and the little gal haven't been getting their fair shake for quite a while. And don't take my word for it. We've been interviewed, we've been questioned, and then they've looked at our record. So I've got my list here. The local farmers, the Kansas Farm Bureau, the Franklin County Farm Bureau, they've backed me. They've said 2 more years. Same with the ranchers. They've been getting hard. That's why meat prices are going up. They're getting screwed by those huge corporations at the top and the meat packing guys. They're not getting a fair shake. I'm the best candidate to help them. I'm endorsed by the Kansas Livestock Association. Same with business. The Kansas Agribusiness Council has endorsed me. Construction, the Kansas Contractors Association, teachers, education. I've been in our schools. I've been at events from music to athletics. The Kansas National Education Association has backed me because I support our students and our educators. And then the last one I'll mention is I've got a 100% pro-life voting record. Kansans for life. I'm the only candidate they've endorsed in this race. So I'll close with a couple things here. It's transparency. I've said from the beginning I'm not perfect, but I'm going to do my best. If you guys have ideas, I will answer your questions. I listen. I always try to do better. And then the last thing I'll mention is I'm active in the communities. I've been in each one. I'm there, I'm listening, and that's what we need to fight for us in Topeka, because I know our community. So I humbly ask for your vote again to serve 2 more years for you guys in Topeka. Please get out and vote on August 4th. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Next two I'd like to have come up are candidates for Franklin County Commissioner Roy Dunn and Brian Webster, running unopposed. And I'm going to give each of you 2 minutes to introduce yourself as well. You ready, Richard? Okay, we'll let Mr. Dunn start.
I'm Roy Dunn. I'm running for re-election for the 3rd District of Franklin County to be on the Board of Franklin County Commissioners. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for holding this legislative get-together here today. It's been a privilege and an honor to represent the 3rd District and to serve all of Franklin County. One indication to me is all the people who wanted me to run for re-election this last year. I think my record stands for itself over the years, and that's why nobody was running against me. So I think that's an indication that things are going pretty good, and also none of the other elected officials are opposed at this time in the election. So one other thing I just wanted to mention, and ever since I've been on the commission, our property taxes have been flat. And that's an indication that Franklin County is growing, it is prospering, And now we just have to continue on. I appreciate everybody for coming out and appreciate you all vote for me in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Good evening, my name is Brian Webster, running for the 3rd District. How about a good great applause for Roy Dunn, 3-time champion. How about it, everybody? Way to go, Roy. Well, I didn't have a speech planned, so I'll keep it short and sweet. What you see is what you get. I'm the new kid on the block. It's a learning experience, and I'll do the best I can. If you have any questions, tell me. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so next I'd like to have Peg Pearson, Rod Harris, and Gabriel Wilkins come on up. So I'll give each of you 2 minutes to introduce yourself. And Gail, you would like to start?
Good evening. I'm Gayla Wilkins. I have been a resident of Franklin County since 2005. I was hired by the first county administrator to be his assistant. Within 1 year, I was promoted from that position to the Human Resources Director position for Franklin County, and I continued to work in that capacity until last year whenever I retired. I, in that capacity, prepared about 40% of the annual budget for employee benefits and personnel costs. I have a master's degree in business administration and a bachelor's degree in business education. Having had the opportunity to sit in the office, the same office space or area that the county administrator has over the past years, gave me the opportunity to also hear not only what the employees' concerns were, but the public's concerns, and I feel like that was very much an advantage for me. I have a spouse and 5 grandsons, no granddaughter. I love being in this community. I retired, like I said, last year in this community, and I hope to make this community a better place because I want it to be wonderful for not just my children, but for grandchildren and for all those in the years to come. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Peg Pearson. I am a lifelong Franklin County resident. I have been employed the last 33 years by 2 different places. I was a paraeducator out at Central Heights for 13 years, and I guess for 31 years total. And I've been at the county, I'm in my 18th year there. I'm a department superintendent. I've learned a lot of things. I've built a lot of trust with the people that I work with that come in and out of my departments, whether they were employees or whether they were customers. And I feel like Franklin County has given me a great opportunity the last 18 years. They've created a good life for me, for my family, and I feel like this is a great opportunity. I'm retiring in December, and I feel like this is a great opportunity for me to step in and give back to the community that has helped me out for so long. I do have a strong belief in county government. I feel like I can step in and I can do a lot of things. I realize I'm only one person that will be on that board. I can't tell you, I'm not going to stand here and promise you things, because if I did that it would be a lie. But I can tell you that I will give you the best that I have to offer. I just drew a blank, thank you. But anyway, I am who I am. I have an open door policy, and will always have for the people in this community. I ask you to get out and vote on August 4th and support your candidate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. My name's Rod Harris. I've been working a good part of my life. I'm kind of excited running for this, or I'm not kind of, I am excited running for this, for County Commissioner on District 2. Some of my background is I've sat on the Planning Commission for the city for 7 years. I sat on the Planning Commission for Franklin County for 12 years. I was on the Fair Board for 20-some years, and basically still involved with them because I take care of the barbecue. We have a big barbecue out there every year, but not this one, they're missing out. So next year it'll be good to be back. Another item that I have is I have worked road construction for 40 years. Kittle Construction out here in North Town. It's a good company. Anyway, I'm hoping to take some of my experience and be able to help out with some of the decisions that's being made in the county and be able to help out the people that's involved. I know I heard a lot of people talking about 20 years of marriage and stuff, but I got a gal that has been involved for like 41 years, so it'll be 14 days after the election. So, but we've also got 2 good kids that live here in town. We've got 3 grandkids and 1 more on the way by the end of the month. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And bless your heart, man, 41 years.
No doubt.
So we're going to start out with this question. It's not the hardest hitting question, but I really like this to get us started, to maybe give us all some insight to your personalities. This question is, where is your favorite place to spend time in our county and why? And Pat, I'll let you start with this question. We'll go 1 minute each on this question.
My favorite place to spend time in this county is down in the southern part of the county, down at Richmond Lake. You can go down there any evening, fall, summer, spring. You can kick back, you can watch the people fish, you can watch the kids on their motorbikes. It's just a very peaceful place to be. And if you ever need to go somewhere to collect your thoughts, to me, that is the ideal place to go.
Rod, do you want to go next?
Sure. I would have to guess it'd probably be right out here on Rock Creek in Old 50. My family has been in cattle business for almost, since '83, that my boys decided to take over and start a registered Angus herd. So we put a lot of hours into it. It's a lot of fun. He did bring me a new ride home the other night, so it's green and got some tires on it, so I'm kind of happy to ride around in it and maybe put a few bells on it. But anyway, my problem is I like to work, so, and that's what I want to turn on and help out the county. So, go from there.
Thank you.
That's a very difficult question for me because I love so much about Franklin County. I grew up in a small community, a lot like Ottawa, but had grandparents who had a farm, and I loved going to that farm. I lived for that, and our family had to drive about 3 hours every time we went to visit them, and it was well worth that trip for me every time. So if I have to pick one spot, I would have to say I love where I live. I love fishing, I like gardening, I love spending time with my grandchildren. Every one of them are spoiled rotten. So to me, it's being with family and friends and being able to share life in general. And I think we have such a great place here in Franklin County. We don't have neighbors that are right next to us. We have the opportunity to share good times and fellowship with friends and neighbors. So I would have to say I'm just content with living where I live and having the opportunity to share it with all the people in Franklin County.
Rod, I'll let you start this next question, and we'll go 2 minutes each on this question. So, if elected, what steps will you take to curb the increases in our county budget?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think with this COVID, it's going to be a big challenge anyway, just to take care of what we got going on with the money we have allocated at this point in time. So it is definitely going to be, it's going to be a job for whoever gets in. So I guess that's my explanation.
Okay, well, I'll have you go next and answer the same question. Want me to repeat it? Okay.
I believe, at least from my time there at the county, that there are some greater efficiencies that we can take a look at within the county. An example of that is one thing that's actually been on the agenda recently, and that has been the landfill and the purchasing a compactor, which will extend the longevity of our landfill an additional 3 years. I also believe that some greater efficiencies could come from information technology software updates. It's a very archaic system that the county has been using for a long period of time. Obviously, there is a hefty cost anytime you're getting into the software systems, but those systems have to talk within the various departments of the county. So the clerk's software has to talk with the appraisers, and the appraisers has to talk with the treasurers, and all of them have to talk with the human resources, personnel, budget, etc. While that is a pricey item, I do believe that there have been funds that are set aside for capital improvements. In utilizing the funds in this way, I believe that that would afford us to possibly utilize staff differently. By that I mean maybe we would need less clerical individuals, because all of that work now can be handled differently by the technology. Then by taking those tax dollars and resourcing them to maybe another area where we possibly are a little weaker in. It might possibly be that we would take a look at hiring a mechanic and do more of our maintenance on our vehicles and etc. And therefore have an additional savings by not having to outsource those things. So I believe that there are some greater efficiencies that we can I should say, adjust within the county, and I would like to see us take a look at some of those and possibly move forward with keeping the tax rate as it is, the tax levy as it is, but utilizing what we have and those resources maybe a little differently.
Okay.
I'm not going to argue with what Gayla said. We do have to look at where we can make some cuts, make some adjustments. I do feel like our commission looks at that every year pretty heavily. And I know there's always places to make changes. I know she spoke briefly about the solid waste department and purchasing a compactor. And what people don't realize is that there are no tax dollars that are put towards the solid waste department. It is a self-funded department. Any money that comes in out there is split up into special caps, a general fund, and then what they call an RSWC account, which is an account that's used if we ever have to close that landfill. So those dollars really do not affect our overall general budget. But yes, there are places that I'm sure we can make some cuts, things that we can monitor, and possibly even find some ways maybe to even make a few cutbacks. To hopefully at least hold taxes where they're at.
Peg, I'll have you go ahead and stay up here, and I'll let you start the next question. We'll go 2 minutes each on this question as well. What are your views on spending the transient guest tax locally?
I feel like that's something that would benefit the county. I'm not real well versed on the transient guest tax, I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to stand up here and blow smoke. But I do think that's something that would definitely help within our county.
Okay. Thank you. Rod, same question. What are your views on spending the transient guest tax locally?
I'm about in the same boat as I'm not familiar with that question, but once I get in there and I'll check it out and see what I can get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Gayla?
I believe the transient guest taxes, the guest tax that we get from the hotels and the local areas that people come to utilize as the county sees fit. I believe that some of that transient guest tax, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe that some of it is used to fund various community events. And I could be wrong, but I believe that that's things like the Richmond Fair, other types of events that are held within our community. I do know that those are oftentimes requested by the individuals who are hosting those events, and then the county allocates those dollars for those various events. I believe it's for a worthy cause. I believe that sometimes we're a little Ottawa-centric. And I do believe that we need to spend money in the other parts of our county.
Thank you. I forgot who I left off with on the last one. So, Ron, I'm going to pick on you and make you start this time because I can't remember who I said last time. We'll go 1 minute each on this question. Rob, tell me about your plan to improve county roads.
I'm hoping that this is my strong point with the 40 years of construction I have, where a person would have a little bit of input to be able to help out with the committee, and also in helping out with the supervisor and stuff. So as far as getting in there and a person could probably work with those areas. I'm not trying to be I do not want to be a micromanager, though. I mean, I think that's the strongest suit is actually staying as where you can take care of this being a commissioner, not a person that just goes out and kind of tries to start showing them how to do it. Anyway, it'd be a lot in as far as the maintenance part of the roads and stuff like that would be the biggest thing.
Thank you, Rod. Gayla, same question.
The group of staff that works out of the Public Works Department, I can't speak more highly of that group of people. They're hardworking, they're dedicated to what they do. The unfortunate thing, I think, for many of them is the frustration with the county roads themselves because they put a lot of hard work into putting in culverts and putting down rock, only to have natural elements just undo everything they did. So to speak to the county roads, I can only tell you that from my own personal experience and from all of the work that I've seen and all of those people that I know in that department, they're committed to doing well. It doesn't often appear that way because, as I said, things get undone after they're done by elements that they have no control over. I do believe that our Public Works Department has done a great job in purchasing products and materials to utilize in a quantity that will last us, but by purchasing in larger quantities, I do also believe that there's a cost savings to that. I believe David Lee has really stepped in and he's tried to do the best he can to be a good leader out there. So while it's frustrating, and I live on the county too, and I have county roads, and there are potholes, and all those things are there, I also understand the challenges that that group of people have, and I also know that they're working to the best of their ability.
Thank you.
I can tell you in our Public Works Department, those guys they're out there every day and they're battling these roads. What people a lot of times don't realize is that every road the base of it's compiled of something different. You may have a rock base, you may have a sandy, silty base, you may have a mud base, and that has a lot to do with the way your roads withstand some of the elements. Flooding, that's just a no-go for any condition. What you have though are about 24 people in that department that are covering about a 1,500 mile area in the county. That'd be like taking a 4x4 map and throwing 24 dots out on it and say, okay, fix all these roads. And everybody's road is of importance. And of course it is. But they have to take and try to figure out the priorities and where to turn their focus first. I work closely with those guys, and I don't have any problem continuing to work with David and that group if I'm elected.
Thank you, Paul. So, I'm going to give each of you 2 minutes for your closing comments now. And Gail, I'll have you start our group and just tell us why you'd be a good candidate for us to vote for.
Well, I appreciate you all being here. I have really enjoyed meeting so many people as I have been campaigning, and it amazes me at the number of people who have moved to our community from other areas. Florida and California are the most popular ones that I have come across. I love what I do here in the county as a county citizen. I have worked for Franklin County because I enjoyed what I did as an employee for Franklin County. I would like the opportunity to serve again in a different capacity as the county commissioner in our district. I want to know what your views and opinions are and share those issues as I can with the board. I also am very excited about Advent Health and having accessible health care for our community. The community I grew up in Oklahoma struggles right now to have anyone who can maintain and manage the hospital. So the hospital here is extremely important to me, and having the health care is important to me. I would like very much to see if we can reach greater efficiencies within the county. And I want to help Ottawa not just survive as my community back home tends to be doing right now, but I want it to thrive, and I hope to be a part of that, not just for my generation, but for those generations to come. And I would promise to work very hard at listening and sharing what you have as concerns, and do the best that I can to impact our community and my district in a positive way.
Thank you. I'll have you go next.
I think what I bring to the table in this campaign is that I come in with a common sense approach. I don't have any axes to grind. I don't have a hidden agenda. I'm not part of the good old boy system. I'm just here to represent the people in this district, and I will do that to the best of my ability. I'm open-minded. Like I mentioned before, I always have an open door, and I'm more than happy to listen to anyone that has a problem. And I will go to the board. I'm sassy, I'm spunky, and I'm not afraid to speak up. And if I can be that one person that maybe swings a vote to go the other way, if that's what we need to happen, I will be that person. So I would just ask for your support in the primary, and I thank you all for coming tonight.
want to thank the Chamber for having this event tonight. I guess really the Chamber and everybody for building this last year, so it's a nice looking venue. I guess my strong suits would be the construction end, 40 years. I do own some businesses. I run a little auction down in, agri-auction down in Princeton, as far as selling hay and firewood and stuff. And you've probably seen the Rock Creek trucking running around town and happen to be my trucks. So I do have a little business background to help on some of the decisions. And I'm kind of excited. I mean, back in the past, I was actually one of the owners at Franklin County Livestock years ago. And so I feel that I have enough background to make the right decision for the people of Franklin County. With retiring, I'll be retiring from Killows in December. That'll give me a lot of time to be able to help on this project. So please vote for Rod Harris, August 4th, and then come help Pam and I celebrate on September 15th. We have signs, pins, and brochures back there. And my time's up. Thanks.
Well, thank you to all three of you for being here this evening. Appreciate it. I know there's still some other candidates here, so if anyone has questions or wants to talk to them, looks like you'll have some time to hang out. As everyone just mentioned, the primary election is August 7th. Advance voting began on July 20th. You can still do that. If there are any candidate materials left behind, they're going to get tossed. So if you want to keep them, take them with you. And I want to again thank you to our sponsors, Ottawa Area Chamber of Commerce and the Legislative Action Committee, and everyone that volunteered to be out here this evening, AT&T, Franklin County Farm Bureau Association. And again, thank you all for coming out and joining us on this humid, steamy evening, and thank you to the candidates for being here as well.